Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Freaky Friday, right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight, and what an absolutely amazing woo crew we have got lined up here. And not only that, we've got one of our very favourite guests and one of the best guests to fit a Freaky Friday that any of us can think of. And I want to come to my good friend, fellow host on the network first, Mr. Joe Joseph. These are the nights we look forward to, man.
It's Friday. We made it, man. Another week.
We're still here, just Joe. But listen, before we go anywhere, I mean, we have got a world-renowned scientist on tonight. But Joe, this isn't your only brush with a top scientist this week. What is going on with you and Michio Kaku?
I have no idea yet. But he's my Facebook friend now, and I'm excited.
No wonder, man. Hats off. But, Joe, you have to try and ask him on to Freaky Friday.
I will ask him, no doubt. And then, of course, you know, it's not every day you get Clyde Lewis wanting to come on KBS now, isn't it?
Oh, shh. Did you have to let that one out the bag, dude?
Yeah, you just did it to me. Thank you very much.
That's right, folks. My hero in the podcasting world is going to be coming on to the Kev Baker Show. Clyde Lewis does KBS. Keep your eyes open for that one in the very near future. Now, it's not just me and Joe tonight. We have got the amazing Mr. Kenneth Webb changed the channel as well. Ken, it's time to get
freaky.
See, you read my mind, man. How you doing, dude?
Doing good, man. Glad it's Friday.
So are we, because it's always great to have you on board, Ken. Really, really good video you released today as well. We'll play that later on in the show for all of the audience. But on to our next Woo Crew member tonight, Scotty Lopez. How's it going, man? And how's Windows 10 fitting you? Did you get it on your machine? Why did you do that?
No. I'm running it in a sandbox just to see what it's all about.
Just to see how bad it
That's
really
very
is.
technical term right there. Yeah, she was playing in his sandbox.
It's okay, Joe. I've had Anonymous on this week. It's all cloak and dagger stuff. I know what it's all about.
At this point, I mean, look at now we got the good doc on. It's been like cloak and dagger week.
Exactly. Before we get to the good doc himself, Johnny Whistles, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Kevin. What a fantastic woo crew to have tonight for a round table. This is going to be amazing. Fantastic.
And Johnny, it's thanks to you, because you were the one that touched base with the good doc. So we have to thank you for lining up this very special show tonight. But before we get to the good man, head into the chat room, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm in there just now, Kevin. We have 42 people in the chat. Thanks very much. Starting with our brother Joe. We've got Lucky, Penelope. We've got Alan, Angie Marie, Anthony Blair, Ozzy Anzac. We've got Bill, Calvin, Carol Morgan from Bellshill, Caroline. We've got Charlie, Chris A. We've got Common Sense, Daryl, Devlin, Gail Wood. How you doing, pal? Gergs. We've got Human Commodity, Iferian, Jeremy Trott, John Teeter was here. Jonathan, we've got Ken Webb. How you doing, brother? What a fantastic video you got out today. Amazing. Should go and see it, everybody. Kev Baker. We've got Lass So Good. We've got Lichty Lass, Lucky Man, Mark Grief, Michael Scott, Michael. We've got Nancy Lalonde, myself, Reese Bevan, Rex Joy. We've got Richard, Sam Ramirez, Sharon, TFR Wookie, Time Lord, the one and only Tim Osman, Tony Phillips, and last but not least, Transpersonals, Kev.
Awesome. And our special guest tonight, folks, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, our favorite. It's Miller time. And RichardAllenMiller.com, little background on him. He's an author and researcher, and he reveals in depth of knowledge and experience in alternative agriculture, physics, and metaphysics. He began working in the secret world of Navy intel in the late 60s and now has amazing experiences and conclusions to share, which he will share with you tonight. He named his publishing company Oak, and I'm just speculating here, but I have a theory as to why it's named that. And that theory is that because Doc was part of the Knights Templar, and went to Oak Island and buried the Ark of the Covenant and designed. I can't even finish.
So here's how that is. Here's the official story. The Organization for the Advancement of Knowledge was a think tank that I set up in the early 70s at Boeing, Battelle, Douglas United Nuclear, and a couple of other organizations that later became MRU, or Mankind Research Unlimited. It was a think tank set up exactly like Cohen's at Princeton. When I was at Princeton, I was part of Cohen's original think tank. And then when Boeing hired me, they asked me to put a think tank together like that. That's what I did. It was Oak. And I did it now for lectures, writing, and research. And that's what it was about. Like Northwest Botanicals was for marketing, processing, and cottage industries. And so, yeah, I have different corporations that I did over the years that had, slots in it. And whenever I do a seminar or I do a workshop in agriculture or anything, it was always through Oak. And so I started to self-publish, and that's why it's oak-publishing.com.
See, Kev, I told you I could coax it out of him.
Absolutely fantastic. I still don't know those, Joe.
Just put me down those Reese's Pieces, and I'm your Huckleberry.
And I kind of figured, and who, of course, I had to figure that there'd be like, you'd have a CIA approach to the whole thing, right? So here I am. I'm the parent. I'm the umbrella, the parent company, and I work through a bunch of front companies to. It's awesome, man. It's great to have you here tonight, and it's going to be an awesome broadcast full of fun, excitement, and woo.
So I met a woman called Annie Jacobson. She wrote the Pentagon Papers and the Operation Paperclip. And I'm hoping she would like to come up and edit Spook Central because that's the work I did at MRU. And then I have a second book called The SEAL Reports. Both of those are essentially ready for press. The SEAL Reports are 12 reports I did for Navy SEALs. And basically, this is going to be a snapshot of literally what was going on in research. It's not as glamorous as you would think it was, and it was weirder. In fact, there are things 40 years later, I still have no idea what I actually witnessed, saw, like Whirling Dervish. The idea of being able to change space and time with dance and movement. Ghost dance. What do they call that? The idea where it started with Gabriel Roth is the current one. You go back to Kate Bush, and before Kate Bush was Kenneth Anger and the Magic Lantern Cities. Yes, I am a Knight of the Temple. I am also a Prince of Jerusalem, is my rank or title in OTO. So, it's not that big a deal. Why I got into the occult was because when I came out of graduate school, every single bureaucracy has an occult element in it for almost 400 years.
Sure.
I mean, Yale had Skull and Bones, Harvard had, they had all these different secret organizations. They had their little, pledges and, the little games they do with paddles and whips. And so Jesuits come to mind that,
we were just talking about that, Kev, weren't we? Isn't that what we were just talking? What was I saying? I was hey, it's those Catholics that whip themselves. What are they?
Whip themselves into a frenzy.
Only half an hour ago, Joe.
Yeah, you use the cat of nine tails, and it has a little tiny piece of shell at the end of each little nine tail, so it's touching good. Yeah, rock salt, and that works.
Wow, yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, the thing is, when I decided to do this radio thing, I've started to go back into interfacing with some of these weird organizations. And so I'm wearing my great-grandfather's talisman here. I had given it to my daughter about 10 years ago as an antique, passing it down in the family. And then when I had to go on with Simon LeBeau and Kino, I decided to start warming up, manning up again, wearing my talismans and, bulletproof vests and things like that. I'm just kidding.
No, it's all good. Yes, of course.
There's more going on in that arena than anybody has a clue. Magic was always reserved for the ultra elite of Europe for centuries. Your finest authors, your finest poets, your Shakespeare, Bacon, whatever, they all belong to orders for basically trying to evolve consciousness. That was what the intent was, why I went in. I'm going in as they call it a cult. That means it's secluded. There is an exceptional book you could start reading called The Occult by Colin Wilson. That's a good place to start. Or Man, Myth, and Magic by Richard Cavendish. That's exceptional encyclopedia. And with artwork and all of it showing the crossovers of the various religions and how they interface with the occult.
And Doc, this is amazing because our guest last night, he was talking about the Templars. And when they came back to Europe, they brought with them a lot of these spells and these magical rituals. And it's exactly like you're saying. This is how the elites in Europe amassed their power. And it's amazing how, coming from the world you do, how this all fits together.
Well, stay tuned on how that works. I went toward becoming a Hermetic Kabbalist. That's what I did. I studied 6 years with Gershom Scholem and did my own biblical translations. And today I'm working ecumenically with all the groups of churches here in my area around the education of children. And everybody gets that part. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. I don't know if we've been invaded. Probably. That's, it's all possible because it is our imagination that is creating the aliens and the apocalypse. That's exactly how it works. Imagination is reality. And the book I'm writing right now has various chapters on cold fusion and the nature and memory of water and how you use these with intent and purpose to create and change the movie.
Now, Doc, you talk about this movie and how we create everything with our imaginations, and I'm totally on the same page with that. But you also talk about time travel as well. Now, I'm wondering how time travel fits into a future that hasn't been determined yet, if it's been painted by our imagination, which, like you say, we can change the movie. How does time travel fit with this?
So we're going to have to define some terms like flow, and and the glass half full, options in the way you choose to see what's going on. Evolution of consciousness. So 45 years ago, I trained SEALs on how to control heart rate, pulse, respiration using biofeedback. That was 45 years ago. And one of those things, just for example, in the ability to control your breath and control of breath, you can change the way you perceive time. Time is a duration of consciousness, Robert Ornstein. It is the way you store memory in your brain. And by the way, your brain is two brains, so there's kind of like a structure going or duration that has to go from this point in the brain to that point in the brain, and it rotates around and rolls around, and that sets up a set of sacred geometries. And we're going to talk about Alex Kavarinen's work and the way a resonant cavity oscillator will radiate information to the next system, upward or downward, like a habitat. In your body, you're like what? 20% human, probably less. Actually, you're more like 10% human, and the rest of you are bacteria, viruses, molds, and water transport processes. You're a habitat. That means that you are no longer what you eat, it's whom you feed. And that across the board, including thought, because thought is another form of food. If you want to look at hierarchies of the way information folds down into or out of itself holographically. So, we're going to do models on this thing so that when you choose to look at the universe in a certain way, you have options or doors that are available to you that are not available in a quantum universe. For example, in a quantum universe, everything is based on space-time. Everything is measured in space or time. And because of that, you have an uncertainty principle. The more you know about one thing, the less you know about another. And that is the limitation of a quantum universe and a quantum form of consciousness. And so when you look at a holographic model, it's a model, doesn't mean it's true. It'll change in 20 years, trust me. I don't know of any law that lasts longer than 20 years in physics. But once you have it in your mind's eye, that's where it happens. Not the math, not the physics or the explanation. And that's why the Aborigines and Hopi and other forms of what we call now cybernetic anthropology, that area of structuring to look at memes and the ideas. I'm going to give you and just drop a little poison right in front of you here. How about this one? How about Lucifer.com? That's an interesting place. You go there, and that's a bunch of social anthropologists that are trying to mess with you with a concept called the Church of the Virus. And the idea is that an idea is a virus. It's a higher form of sickness. That's why I question it. I'm just going to poke some buttons here to see how everybody moves.
No, this is great stuff because, Doc, everyone knows I kind of go by the name of Quantum Kev, but you're absolutely right. Everything quantum, it's all pure theory, and models change over time. And Joe, it's great that we can have various guests coming on here. We've had Anthony Patch talking about his model of the universe, and tonight we're going to have Doc talking about his model of the universe. And what's brilliant is we can all sit here and discuss it, and who knows who's right, but it's the right thing.
It isn't about being right. That's the other part of it. When you instead of have resistance, you have impedance. Now you have an imaginary solution. And the imaginary solution doesn't have real application other than it allows you to understand where some of your resistant losses are lost in other forms of conductance. And so the math allows you to, when you choose to look at a universe in a certain way, a holographic universe is based on information and the resolution of it. For example, in the physical plane, we have a phenomena. At the higher level is the emotional plane, which is how you feel about it. And above that is the intellectual plane, and you have a hierarchy. And I chose arbitrarily Timothy Leary's works, Neurologic Circuits, because it worked with Fibonacci, 7 chords in an octave, as above, so below. It's the way information collapses down into itself or out of itself, and I'm guessing it is the specific geometry of the neurotransmitter that the way it collapses down and sets up resonant cavity oscillation in the brain. So 45 years ago, I was training SEALs how to control heart rate and pulse and respiration using biofeedback, EEG, electromyograph, whatever. Today, I'm doing the same thing with neurotransmitters. You can actually recognize specific neurotransmitter releases in your body by phenomena that has a physical log. For example, dimethyltryptamine gives you that chill. That goes up and down, chill right there. The one you felt, that's dimethyltryptamine being released in your body. That means you can actually control it. Once you identify lysergic acid amide, a HOP drug, that one that connects one dot to the other, now you have the next level of evolution where you're playing these things in release like you would music.
And Doc, we've all experienced that shivery feeling that you just went through there. How do we actually hone in on that?
I got a theory on that.
Go for it, Joe.
I feel it about the same time every morning, normally about 7:30.
Oh, get a grip, man. That's just.
I break out and get that shiver, that cold shiver, that cold sweat, and it's a rush to stall number 2.
It's a lie. It's a lie. Yeah, I know. Take it down to the base level. That's everything. And that's how you recognize how to raise and lower your heart for your doctor, right there where he's got a cuff on. Yeah, you do it. I even taught my SEALs how to be interrogated or be interrogated or to interrogate. And look, neurolinguistic. There's analogs, always analogs. If it's got an emotional content to it, it will have a physical representation. You can measure it. In my ESP book, I measured 102 different stages of hypnosis with different bodily functions that you can measure, like your nose goes numb. And so I did in my Power Tools book, I did the same thing on the ontologies of mystical states, where I'm giving you different layers of cosmic consciousness. And you have several different ways of approaching that. You had the prototaxic, where you're shamanistic, and glossia, automatic writing. You move up into the art state, trance art, and creativity. You move into the art state, where everything is in dream and metaphor. And then the syntactic modes of consciousness, where you're using biofeedback, sex magic, and other kinds of tools that have been associated through history on how to change space and time.
Great.
Now, well, let me tell you what's happening. When I started doing these exercises, because I have to do it in order to be able to.
Did you just say these sexercises? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, sex magic.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the thought that occurs at the moment of climax happens.
So
that's the Masonic.
So tantric stuff then.
Yeah, it's called the Mass of the Holy Ghost, to be precise. And there's something about consuming the Eucharist when it's the red eagle and the white lion. And I can get right down into it, but it's the using emotional content to punctuate the thought form and taking psyche into matter.
Oh.
Now, that's how you change the movie.
Yeah,
Now,
that's how you impress the girl, too. Woo!
So let me tell you, I have been practicing on myself with these neurotransmitters and trying to exercise to the point where I'm semi-paranormal about it, like being able to lower. Okay, so what happened is that right now, as a result, I hit a resonance, and it's my future talking to me right this moment and literally changing my past. Because when I did Navy SEAL, say it was called SEAL Corporation, like a JAR SEAL, I had no idea. Out of Amherst, it had nothing to do with Navy SEALs and the hoorah. It wasn't like that back then. Now, that's what I'm trying to talk about, how my future in certain timelines. You have, what is time? Okay, the paper I wrote out of graduate school, the first paper I wrote when I presented in Chicago at a psychotronic conference, one of the early ones, I said, the title was Time Distortion, or I Never Knew There Were Corners in Time Until I Was Told to Stand in One. Now, that's the original paper. And where I am right now on time travel, the chapter on time travel is called Rock the Casimir, or Adventures in Time Travel. The Casimir effect that Bendy and others have shown for capacitance in the way to store energy or somehow have free energy somewhere is the difference in that whole system of mathematics is that it is an open system rather than a closed system like thermodynamics. Now, that is where the differences in styles are. Be interesting to see what Metrikoku or whatever has to say about that kind of physics. There's a mathematician that did some work on that, Avram Moll's Aesthetic Perception and Information Theory is French. That has just been translated into English, so it's available to you. I'd like you to read Alex Kavarinen on his work. He's dead now. He did work on the structure of water and how the microtubule systems will take and resonate into the physical world. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is literally do it as a physicist with experiments. And I am literally changing things now. And I think everybody gets exactly what I'm talking about. And with that, if you can see it in your mind's eye, that is what makes it real.
This is absolutely fascinating. And Joe, with the doc here talking about changing things in his own past, I think after the break, we have to ask him about this Mandela effect.
Yeah. We have to ask him about the Berenstein Bears.
Definitely, but we've got maybe a minute before the break, Joe. I'm seeing some of the chat room. Their brains have melted already, but we haven't even started yet.
Yeah, I know. This is just
getting calls from the gallery because I'm more than me just talking. I can talk, but more than me talking, I really am like the postman. I'm a supercomputer. I'm basically a 4-year-old that had never became 7. I have a eidetic memory. What do you want to know? And I'm looking at all kinds of different writings in these different areas. And the wonderful thing is I can't be snowed by math. So, I've got Flanagan down. I've got Anderson down. I've got a bunch of different people down. And the math part is where you can communicate it to the so-called nerds. Once they get it, it becomes reality.
Here we go, guys. Things really are about to get freaky on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. The doc is just warming up. Another time.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of tonight's very Freaky Friday. I'm one of the Woo Crew, Kev Baker. The other voice there is Mr. Joe Joseph. We've got Scotty Lopez, Ken Webb, and last but not least, Mr. Johnny Whistles. And tonight's guest is Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and you can find him at richardallenmiller.com or docram.com. Now, Doc, I believe you're going to be doing a 2-day survival course soon. Do you want to tell us about that?
No,
I'm sorry. I was being what? Say again, please.
You've got a kind of survival skill shop coming up.
Oh, yeah. I wanted you to mention that. Yeah. In the end of March, Matt Stein and I are going to be doing a 2-day urban survival skill workshop. We're going to do a 1-day prepping for free, open to the public, and then a 2-day, major workshop, the two of us, on how to prep up for what's coming around the corner. And the city of Hollywood is promoting it. They're going to film it. They're going to make some movies out of it. And part of it will be on a black start, which was about the grid going down in Santa Barbara. And so there are going to be some filmmakers making this into a series of new age, how to get yourself prepped up. That's what we're doing. And it'll be at March 17th through the 20th, I think. The city hasn't approved that date, but I think that's what they're going to do. And they're going to hold it at the
Church of Scientology.
I'm sorry?
Was it at the Church of Scientology?
No, it's the Church of Scientology. There's a lot of trolls around there. That's where they hang out, is in places like brain drivers. That's. I was part of. There's an article in the Seattle Times called Police File 1001, where I was used to help break that process group out of Boston down.
Wow.
L. Ron Hubbard was OTO. I'm way higher in the order, and I'm one of the physicists that didn't blow myself up like Jack did. Yeah. So there you go. That's how that on the edge.
But yeah, you'll be in like the Scientologist capital of the world, really. I mean.
Well, it's one of them. They think Boston is too, but
Yeah, that is too. I mean, they do have the big building and the reflecting pool and all, like right in Boston. But Hollywood, that's kind of where all your high profile Scientologists are, and it's interesting. So you'll be teaching survivability in the heart of Scientology. This is excellent. I like this.
Well, they're going to need something.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because I think there's going to be some changes geographically this year. I think that we're already, Well, NASA has already seen something out past the Oort cloud. What they have observed is a planetoid that planet that is 5.5 times larger than Earth and much more massive, probably out of iron or nickel, and somehow has strange IR signature to it.
Right.
Now, and that only possibility I could think of that would alter an IR signature would be a Dyson sphere. And it might be a brown dwarf surrounded by a structure. And that would make sense in terms of what I'm now researching in various epochs and their technologies.
Doc, you say a brown dwarf surrounded by a structure. Now, this structure, is this man-made or is it something?
Yeah. There's a Dyson sphere is what I'm proposing it probably is. However, but there's this video I posted that's anthropologically where they have now proven that the cave drawings that we witnessed 30,000 years ago and so on were not drawn by Aborigines hunting bison. In fact, the bison represents a star constellation, and all those unusual dots in that spot there correspond exactly to star constellations. They were trying to communicate to us about they had astronomy. Now, some of the older ones, the star clusters on these cave walls are backwards, indicating that they saw them from space. And that means previous epochs had higher technologies than we did in some manners.
That's interesting you say that, Doc. You often bring up books you've been reading. I've been reading Earth's Earliest Ages by George Pember, written in the 1880s. And basically he uses the Bible to make the case for a pre-Adamite civilization, one of advanced technology, And it's fascinating because you look at all these things, the megalithic structures, right? All the technology that was there, that you telling me we did it with brass tools? Get out of here.
No, it didn't happen that way. And actually, in fact, there's a lot more going on here. This is our sixth epoch, and we're due at 3,600 plus or minus years. And so now they're observing something out past the Oort cloud that's coming into off elliptic and causing our sun, Jupiter, and all of the different planets in the outer ring to actually aberrate, to prove it's coming in. Now, that's why we had Hubble and Ion and all ice and all the rest of it up there to take a look-see. And I wished I had more data than just what limited BS is coming out of JPL and others. I have a couple friends that have been giving me some very interesting things. All the volcanoes going off, all the earthquakes that we're now enjoying, weather changes. I am going to believe for myself that we are possibly at the end of times, that there will be blood. There has to be. There's so many people on Earth. In any scenario, it is a prime directive. There's too many people. India tried to stop, birth control. China had their 2 children and ghosts. Everybody has been trying to do this. It didn't work. And so now they're doing it with global warming, geoengineering. Listen, I did a study on the one up at Reedsport, Oregon, and the Navy has a new weapon where they're using lithium as a deployment in the aerosols. And they can lock down a small city if it goes in unrest. And a city that size will go into unrest when the ocean currents start to have tsunami and when there is no municipalities able to deliver water. And most people don't even have a clue what they would do the first day if they didn't have water. You're going to go down by the water and just drink it out of the river?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
It'll keep you regular. That's for sure.
But this is really fascinating because
with H. pylori, and I don't even want to go into salmonella. However, what we're doing now is we're taking this science fair bus. There's a science fair bus called the Caterpillar, and it used to go around to all the grade schools teaching entomology. And we've cleaned the bus out. It's going to remain the Caterpillar, but it's going to be more like the one out of Alice in Wonderland that's going to teach the kids on how to determine whether the water's safe to drink. And if the water is not safe to drink, what's in it and can it be fixed? That's what the children are going to learn first. You talked about your sandbox. There's your metaphor. Children go to sandboxes as instinct. They make better decisions than we do in food choices. They can grow better food than a master gardener. I've seen it. So it's a paying forward kind of educational thing where we try to teach them survival independence before they even start their social training.
Wow. And Joe, just this week, we were looking at a story, a scientific report that has come out that says within the next 70 to 80 years, there's an increased chance of places like Yellowstone going off. And of course, we've also been looking at this language that keeps appearing in popular culture, and Tony Patch mentioned it as well, the Golden Age, this approaching new age. And with what Doc's talking about here, with this incoming planetary body, it all fits, Joe.
It does. Now, they've thrown some smokescreen out there in the sense that, wow, we're looking out there now, and by cracky, there could be 10,000 of these bodies out there past the Oort cloud. So they're throwing a lot of fodder out there to I say minimize the importance of this. I think you're totally spot on, Doc. I mean, I think this is the end of the age. That's one way you can look at it, and especially like in the Bible, if you go back to the original Hebrew, it isn't the end of the world. It is end of the age. That seems to me to be like the end of one and the start of a new.
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion on alien intervention. Greg Baer, B-A-E-R, has written a couple of books, Eon and Epoch. That is interesting. Visions be where the mantle is actually going to change. That's Dr. Bert Bolin, University of Stockholm, Sweden, Nobel Prize winner in geoastrophysics. I got to know him when I studied under John Wheeler, and he is suggesting it's going to be a pole shift. We already have the Koryak saying that the pole's already shifted. Yes, but we have not yet had our day after tomorrow, and that's next. That's the reboot of the ocean currents, and that's about to happen also. Right now, you will find in recent days, the Arctic was 70 degrees above normal, 70 degrees above freezing. It was in the 70s. And Antarctica has been, I don't know, what was it called? 67 degrees at one point. The ice is melting off of Greenland, and the way those glaciers are formed, it's actually causing the sea to rise. That is the desalinization of the ocean, and it'll play exactly like the movie The Day After Tomorrow. That is
question, Doc. In regards to that, then, on the flip side, look at Antarctica. Antarctic sea ice is through the roof. So it's interesting
but it was warm as a thing down there. Yes, that's why the Hopi do the ritual of the wobble egg. And they've been doing that for almost a full century. Before Thomas Tanaka, it was Grandfather Joseph. And, that shaman that died in the crossroads when Jim Morrison, that's a real story. That actually happened. That was one of the things we investigated paranormally, because when you cross over, you don't die. And that's why I have CIA letterhead with Jim Morrison's signature on it. And I went to a laser, I think it's a laser company in Oklahoma, and there's a fat Jim Morrison proved it. And you can read about that in a book called Secret and Suppressed by Feral Press. And that article was written by Tom Lytle.
Again, this is amazing, Doc, because just today, I like looking. I like looking at these kind of big kind of pop stars and things like that to see what they're putting out there. And I messaged Joe and I said, Joe, you really have to look at this, because it was almost some kind of shamanic or satanic dancing. Taking part in this David Bowie video. But guys, the name of the album and the song fits with this show because it is called Black Star.
Black Star.
Now, there's a reference to August 2016 at the end of the video.
You ought to see what he's doing with Annie Lennox right now. And Queen. There's a combination, man.
Good loud.
They got a song out again. And I posted a couple places. I have an old one when he did it with Annie Lennox about 30 years ago. And then he's doing it again with Queen and Annie Lennox.
You see, that's why I like to watch him, because it's almost like they're hiding things in his material. But, Doc, you're on about the desalinization of the oceans. And right now, myself and Johnny Whistles, we're sitting in Scotland. Our weather is absolutely upside down. December, one of the warmest and wettest ever.
Yeah, you guys have had like 2 hurricanes in like the last month.
And it's all down to what the doc is talking about, because this desalinization is slowing down the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream drives the jet stream.
It's actually stopped. This Gulf Stream is no longer slowing down. It's stopped. It's gone.
And you see, because of that, Doc, that affects the jet stream. And this is why we're now getting this weird and wacky weather.
And the polar vortexes and all that crap, right? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm concerned that the geoengineering is like trying to piss in the wind. And so what they're doing is experimenting for Mars, probably, just terraforming. I don't know. And if I don't know at my pay grade, then I have to say, I think we're being duped by something else.
Ooh.
Now, you can draw an argument to that by stating, what's that 4th genome in your blood type and where did that come from? And that's where I would hide if I was an alien more advanced than you. And the war for Earth, metaphorically, is going on inside each of you. Get a grip. And so that's why you want to be responsible for the thoughts you choose to entertain. That is the first part of it, but evolving. Moving to the next level of consciousness. And I did it 40 years ago, learning how to control my heart rate, pulse, and respiration. And now I'm trying to do it with my release of specific neurotransmitters in concert. And there are 8 of them, just like polygraph. They call it brain fingerprinting, or what is it? Oh, yeah, P300 waves. That's how you measure it. Listen, I have gone to another level. And that's where time becomes sacred and profane. And it has to do with the resolution of the information that you're choosing to observe. And if you can observe at all levels with conscious volition, you are literally outside of space and time, just like your gut bacteria are.
No, you've melted.
Exactly. You got to stop and think. You got to stop and think to start with. You got to stop and think about the communications, the information that's coming into you, the things you're putting out there, how blocked off you are. I totally feel that all day, every day too, for a very long time. And that's what humanity needs to do. Instead of being so closed off to learn things. Because how many times in our life have we sat there and thought we knew it? We knew it all. How many different times through our age, when we were 20, when we were in the teenagers, when we were 20, when we were 30, we think we know everything. We're not open to learn. We just draw the line in the sand from communication and actually being open enough to learn and taking control of our actions, not being so, programmed to react in a certain way. Because when we do that, we cut off from learning.
So you're talking about mind control and where the thought came from originally. And that's where the aliens hide. That's what made you God's favorite. You have choice. And you either get with the program and you evolve or you don't.
What do you think the likelihood is, Doc, that the ruling elite right now have been hacked? Some alien kind of entity is actually using them.
Well, how did Gecko put it in the movie Wall Street? Greed is good. Keep your eye on the ball, on what's really important. It's not about physical plane. There's emotional, like how you feel about things. That's where most people are stuck, is in ye side. Then you go to the intellectual plane. The fourth one up is the archetypal plane where you are me, and I am you, and I am the walrus. There are 4 more planes above that. And that's what I've been exploring in terms of trying to understand how it works. I'm not there. It's a process. Let me give you the metaphor. Simon says, you can go halfway to the door. And I will never reach the door because it isn't about the door. It's the journey. And so time is the same thing. And the way you look at time and the way you store detail, as it turns out, with hypnosis, going into an altered state, you can remember detail that you had forgotten at your age here, and yet it's still there. It's just that you don't have access to it because you don't know how to drop yourself into that state of hypnosis. Now, if you start there with the ESP book and then move to the power tools, wait till you see what I'm doing with non-local mind and what you can do there.
Well, Doc, I have to ask you, because there's something that we've covered on this show called the Mandela effect. Now, this is one of you've heard of this, Doc, have you?
Yes.
How do you explain this? Because this really, absolutely, I can't get my head round.
Jose Aguiles taught in the classroom next to me when he wrote Mandela at Evergreen. I was first faculty there. He's dead now. They've done a new movie out on him. They did a screening on it about the concepts of Mandela. It starts with the basics of cymatics. The Buddhists used to take a large body of water, and then they would chant and try to get the intonation correctly enough that it caused an interference pattern in the cup that we now called sacred geometry. When you release certain specific neurotransmitters, you set up a resonant cavity oscillation with the microtubules in your brain, and sacred geometry is created. A glial cell starts with a face center cubic hexagonal closed back structure. It's a diamond body. If you envision the diamond body in your mind's eye, that's the first book I wrote on video feedback systems, not audio, video. By the way, to answer that guy that wants to have how do I communicate with the blind? Well, he can call me. There's my number. Give it to him. I believe that communication has a lot of different faces to it. And intent in terms of purpose seemingly are the same. What happens at the end of the day. And yet there is now software, Jade 2.0, others, that can accurately predict what you're going to do 28 minutes before you do. Those are algorithms that Cliff High, others have done, Gertzel, that stuff. However, right now, the New York Police Department is using an upgrade on the 2.0 software to accurately predict when a crime is going to occur in the barrio, or what we call, boroughs in New York, before they happen. And this is like Minority Report, and it's valid. That's what the Jade Helm things were all about, was to shake down the software, see how good it was in terms of how some might react when they saw armed, vehicle going through there.
Right.
They're doing little measurements on how are they reacting and what kind of chatter did it generate on Facebook. And that has gone so far down into data collecting that now they have software that can just go way beyond where you are.
Oh man, I mean, and like you said, the computing power, everything is just it's an amazing thing that we have going on. Also, I think another interesting thing, we've been seeing a lot more of these anomalies pop up from time to time. Like I'm talking about the Mandela, the Mandela effect.
We have different timelines that have blown down into singularity or into substance with data.
Yes.
Now, that's the future. That's why the future is a secondary wave in time. The primary wave in time is the moment it happened, the past. Because you're thinking about it. And when you get into the flow, you now create a sacred time. the way to visualize this is imagine a drum of water, pool of water, and a drop falling down hits that water and bounces back up a little bit. You know how there's like a splash of water then going back up. Okay, now when the drop hits the water, a wave goes out. That is the future. Depending on how heavy that drop was, depending how much water was in that drop, will determine the way the wave goes away on the outside. Now, what happens on the inside is the wave that goes on the inside slaps itself and forms a skin of water trapping the medium it was falling in. That's called cavitation. That is all the work that's happening now at MIT with Mark Leclerc. Others. There are a series of other people at with Penn State. That was what was his name? I'll think of it in a minute. Rustum Roy. There was Mei Wen Ho in China, and of course Dr. Jerry Pollack here. And wait till you see what I'm writing about in a chapter on the structure and memory in water. It is possibly where God resides. Now, it is the smallest molecule we know of that has a dipole moment. And it's going to be that dipole that makes the uniqueness of that molecule as the smallest dipole. I'm guessing it's a dimensional gate of some kind. And I'm going to guess that's where cold goes to heat. You know, like in light goes to dark, black hole into a white hole. And then Roger Penrose in the torus twistor spaces of the geometric universe. And now the paper that Iona and I have written called the dodecahedral universe.
Oh, man.
Well, I've got the physics of, I think, how it's working now enough that stay tuned. Film at 11.
Well, you know what it is? You know what's quite interesting, Joe? When you take this dodecahedron shape and you put it inside the Earth, it matches up with some of these nexus points, like the Bermuda Triangle, and places like that. So there is something, definitely.
You're talking about Captain Cathay's works. Captain Cathay,
hold that thought. We got to go to break, Doc. We'll talk about it on the other show.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones, obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome back, everyone, to tonight's broadcast of Freaky Friday, right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, www.truthfrequencyradio.com. I'm Kev Baker. We've got Ken Webb, Johnny Whistles, Joe Joseph, Scotty Lopez, and our very special guest tonight, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And you can find him over at richardallenmiller.com or docram, DOCRAM.com. And Doc, just before the break came up, you were telling us about this dodecahedron. I was mentioning these points on the planet that seem to correspond with this. Tell us about this, Doc.
Well, Aleister Crowley, in his second book of the law, states a very famous thing states add, divide, multiply, and understand, and one will follow. And everybody originally, because that was written in 1902, and Stanfield Jones, Friedrich Codd, was always considered to be the follower. One will follow. It was called the follower because of his anatomy of the body of God. And basically what he had done is take the tree of life and go on in two dimensions so that there was a reflected tree of life going in the opposite direction. That is what cavitation is about. However, later, as Philo Stone, as a pen name writing by Iona Miller and Richard Allen Miller, they wrote a very famous paper called N equals 50, V equals 7. That is what was basically the beginning of Crowley's quote was N equals 50, V equals 7, add, divide, multiply, and understand, and one will follow. And that's why one of the nicknames now in Croatia and Sweden is that we are called the follower because of the dodecahedral universe. It's based on Roger Penrose suggesting that space bends in on itself or twists into a vortex. In fact, next century, I'm going to tell you my future says there will be a double ganger of each of you, where if you're white, you're black in the other universe, as an opposite imbalance of a torus twister cavitation process. When that drop of water hits the water, it creates a time wave. That's time wave that Terence McKenna talked about in the 0-point energy thing. It has to do with the option of timelines in the way that water will radiate away from itself. It can go very fast, and we'll talk about that later as super cavitation. But tonight, what I'm going to talk about right now is that when that drop hits and it creates the fact, there's a slap where an exclusion zone water, that's H3O2, is a very unusual form of water called the fourth phase of water that will surround an air bubble. And if you look at the air, what it is a topological space going into the out of. It's basically turning into itself, just like Roger Penrose's geometric universe and the idea of torus twister space. Now, instead of looking at it like that, what I'm now doing is using a holographic model, which does not use space-time. It uses information and resolution of information. Now your so-called entanglement is the Bose-Einstein condensate. Last year, we got a Nobel Prize for this guy that says that this particle here and this particle over here are somehow simply connected, because when this goes up, that goes sideways. And in terms of quantum mechanics, you have entanglement and decoherence, whereas in a holographic system, you have information and resolution of information. And there is different constructs. There is a theorem in information theory that says that if you have enough information to ask a coherent question, you have enough information to answer it. Now, that is the very center of what information is and what it is not. And so at a fourth level of archetypal is the gross length, girth, and width of man's thought and abilities. And that's why I will be the first to say that nothing is original. That means there hasn't been any original thought. We're all of us basically remembering. And if I'm a lead scout in some ways, that's because I've been playing with neurotransmitters and trying to show you a technique I've developed that allowed me to go to another level of consciousness.
Wow, Scotty Lopez.
Divine right. You go ahead and measure it by my word and what your gut says from instinct in terms of what I'm saying. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky that I was born out of the crib talking to myself. That means I had union at a very early age. I've always known how I felt about something. That is why they call it EQ. That's what makes a woman superior to a man. It's like...
Doc, is that why you were identified kind of early on by the powers that be, shall we say, as a person of interest, and that's how you ended up in the programs you did?
Oh, well, yeah. You mean old man DuPont putting a bullseye on me? Yeah. I can send you my thesis for when I was age 16 and 17. I just found them on the linear. I invented 2 science fair projects in my junior and senior year. I think it was 1960 and 61. The first was I created a new meson theory that included a new particle called a muon, which now is an elementary particle. Back then, we called it a meson, and it created tachyons, a reflected wave in the universe, and the opposite side of the speed of light. There's like these limit points where everything goes in the opposite direction, as a cavitation ball might be. And so I wouldn't be surprised if hollow Earth actually turned out to be real.
Oh, wow. And Scotty Lopez, let me come to Scotty right now, because Scott, I know that cavitation is something that really fascinates you as well. So if there's anything you would like to ask the doc here, now would be the perfect time, man.
Well, during the break, I was talking about how scientists were doing experiments with sound waves, creating cavitations, and it was creating flashes of light that they couldn't explain.
That's it. Cold fusion. The dolphin.
Yeah, it's an effect that they call sonoluminescence, I believe.
Sonoluminescence. Yeah, it's done with sonar waves or a microwave band. They issue a sonar whistle, and it creates these little tiny balls, and then they make big objects with them, usually a circle or something. They'll play with them and everything, and then just before, and they let them go, when the ball just reaches the surface, that's where the exclusion zone ball is broken, and what's released is light. Yes. Sonoluminescence. And the dolphin are doing it as their art form. Now, I'm going to tell you that I think that there are mammals on this planet that are more evolved technically than man, and we haven't got a clue yet. I can look at mycorrhizae in the soil and tell you where Gaia is as a consciousness. There's a woman up in University of British Columbia in the Forestry Service that talks about the mother tree, the forest that warms through the mycorrhizae network when a forest fire or a big wind is coming through. So awareness. And that is what Whitehead said is why an electron has consciousness, because it knows when it's in a magnetic field. That is the definition. It's a limited form of awareness. And so now you work your way up the food chain and start working neurotransmitters. And now you have access to a whole nother level of dimensions.
Oh, Kev, I think we need access to some more dimensions.
No, but this is cool because the doc's talking about electrons, right? And we cover quantum computers on here, Joe. And the thing about a quantum computer that makes it so unique is the fact that they add a bit of spin to the electron. Now that literally takes it into another dimension. Now, this other dimension, it's like the doc's saying, this is consciousness. So right down to these very basic building blocks, I do believe they do contain consciousness.
I can't see why they wouldn't, Kev. I always look at it like a multiplex signal, these layers of consciousness kind of just all multiplexed together in this stream. Man.
Isn't that what the Akashic record and all that is? It's just...
Well, Doc, these Akashic records, like we hear of all the time, is this one of the layers that we can access?
Yes, you can do it just like Interstellar at the end of the movie, where he is in the Hall of Records trying to push books out of the bookcase to communicate to his daughter in the past.
And you know, it seemed to me, guys, when
That's how you're doing it right now, all of you.
When we watched Interstellar, Doc, it's almost as if they were using knowledge that they're bringing back from somewhere, because that representation of the fifth dimension and the black hole, it's something we've never seen before, but I think it was perfect. That's exactly how it would look, right?
Are you talking to me? I didn't get that.
The actual way that they showed that fifth dimension in Interstellar.
Yeah, wasn't that a very innovative, artistic way of conveying the concept?
Well, I was going to ask you, is it artistic, or were they tapping into maybe something that they do have? Do they have technology where they can look into the fifth dimension, shall we say?
Well, you mean to choose and select timelines? That's what you're doing right now. You just don't realize it. And that's when you get to that level, then you'll realize that it's your one specific timeline in your future is talking directly to you, and it's literally changing your past. And that's when you have union with self, not with God. That's only halfway, and that's called self-realization.
Joe, you getting this, guys?
No, I gotta go pick my brain up. I'll be right back.
Oh, man. Sorry about that.
But you know,
no, it's all right, man. It happens from time to time, you know.
I know. It's all good for you. It's like trying to pay it forward.
It happens to Joe all the time. But, you know, we're talking about Interstellar there. And one thing when I first came across the doc that both intrigued me and astounded me was the fact that he worked on the first season of X-Files. Now, Doc, we're getting ready for a new series of the X-Files coming out.
I can't believe it.
Do you think they hide things in there for us to look at, and basically they're hiding them in the open?
False flags? Oh, sure.
Or even hiding truths in the form of fiction?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, listen, Hollywood, if she could. Trust me.
But Joe, you're looking forward to the new X-Files, right?
Who isn't, dude? Come on. That's like
I don't know who's
next
writing
season
them. It's not me. I'm not going to be doing those. They haven't talked to me. Huh?
No. But I mean, just, it's nostalgia, man. Come on. It's the X-Files, Doc.
Retro. Yeah, I do that with Debbie Harry when I want to do rap. Listen, now, most of you don't even get half of it, but that's okay because it's okay. It's a process. I'm trying to go somewhere with this too. I think there you go. Did you see what I just sent you there? That dimethyltryptamine, how to do it.
Yeah, I'm downloading that now.
Hey,
I'll be reading that tomorrow.
Will you open that and actually take a look at what I wrote? There goes the dimey church down the drain. That's why we have Coriolis sources. There's something else going on with the whole concept of the way water moves in retrospect to magnetic and gravitational fields. And so what is gravity? I have written a very interesting paper on magnetic monopoles. Did you know that they actually have vehicles now that are using those at Boeing? I think Lockheed is too, but I don't know about Lockheed. But I know Boeing has a magnetic monopole, and they are actually running craft with it. 3 and 4 magnetic monopole structures.
Doc, I'm one of these guys that think that maybe gravity isn't really the game that we should be looking at, and it's almost like an electric universe where we're attracted to the planet, and that's why we feel this force.
Didn't that go back to what Chris was saying the other night about the yogis flipping their poles and being able to levitate and stuff?
Well, PK phenomena, yeah. Look, the idea that the poles are shifting is not new, and it's measurable, and the Indians are already saying it's moved. The star clusters are different now, so that part's a done deal. And that's Bert Bolin, University of Stockholm, Sweden. We are going to have a pole shift. It will probably be from some weird planetoid like Nibiru coming through. I have no idea. But I can tell you that the sun has just in the last days done galactic burps that we've never seen before from the sun. Something is perturbating it.
There's something happening, guys. And Joe, this Nibiru talk, it doesn't go away. In fact, it's increasing, man.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is this isn't the first go round with it. I mean, what was it? Iris in the 80s saw it coming in, and now we got the Lucifer telescope on Mount Graham. Come on, you're telling me that doesn't?
Is that you're talking about the Church of Rome's telescope in Arizona?
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Well, something's out there. They've actually, JPL and NASA have released reports. There's several. There are actually 2 planetoids. One is very large. It's 5.5 times bigger than Earth, and much denser. They've already documented that part. I think that's why we were out there by Pluto anyway, to take a look. It's coming in. I don't know. The Clovis culture and cave drawings became the Hopi. And the Hopi's medicine is when they sing the songs and dances of their ancestor. That's like Enemy Mine. And the Hopi have been doing that for 3,600 years, talking about Nibiru. And there you go into the cave in these where the Clovis came out, and there it is. It's pictured right on the wall. There it is coming in. So I don't know because I don't have access. I can only speculate by the kinds of chatter that I see on the internet. I think a lot of the pictures of showing a second sun is, I don't know what that is. I don't think it's that close now. If it was that close, we would be having all kinds of geographic changes. And when I say that, there's no place to hide. On the day after tomorrow, which is going to happen shortly, you're going to need about 10 feet of earth between you and the surface. That's how deep the frost line will go. And it'll kill everything. And that means you have to go down there with your seed because you won't have any microorganism or anything that survives 10 feet. It'll just 100 below zero. There it is. Dead in a minute. Now, they are going to probably have geographic changes. When the day after tomorrow hits, that'll change the weather. And we're having, I'm here in Oregon and we got in the middle of it. We had 12 separate weeks of triple digits. And I've been here for 30 years and only seen one time when we had triple digits 3 times in Grants Pass. And we had 12 times. Now that's how dry it is here. All the wells where I'm living here, I'm up on top of a pretty good hill. There's lots of water right now. But all the wells went dry this summer. They did. Pulled sand. And so that's in Southern Oregon, state of Jefferson, the free state of Jefferson. You want to see a really good science fiction movie? It takes place in 2025 in the free state of Jefferson. It's called Black Road. It's a brand new sci-fi movie out.
Oh,
and
cool.
Black Road. Yeah. It's about where I live and how it goes down. It's about you'll see. There is a book that you could read called Lucifer's Hammer. And he wrote a second book called The Sword of Allah, where a blue turbaned Ayatollah gets a hold of a particle beam weapon and pumps it into the sun rather than on Earth as a weapon and creates special sunspots that sterilizes the Earth. And the last chapter in that book ends up in Grants Pass, Oregon, when a radical individual doing a radical newsletter takes over the presidential bunker that's here. Won't let the president in. Oh, yeah, did I tell you? That's where Colorado Springs has moved to Grants Pass, Oregon, where I live. We have NORAD out in the Applegate, for those of you that are familiar with the area. That's where all the comm systems are. It's all happening, man. What's that?
You say they moved all the comm stuff back into Cheyenne Mountain, right?
No, they did not. It's moved here in Grants Pass.
Ah, okay.
The computer systems were so antiquated, it was cheaper to move it. And they moved to deeper and better, stronger digs than Cheyenne Mountain. That, Silver Springs, Colorado Springs is no longer what it was with NORAD or any of that. It's all been moved here into Oregon.
Well, that's an interesting place for it.
Well, maybe. I don't know, man. We have Ku Klux Klan here. We have, we have the Burns, Oregon. That thing that's going on right now.
Oh, is that close by you?
Yeah, it's about 100 miles from me, about 2.5 hours.
You know what we got to do, Kev? I think this is something that we should do. Can you give Doc the plans to the chronovisor, please, so he can build one and you take it?
That's exactly what we need right now. And if any man's used a chronovisor, I imagine it's Doc Miller.
That's what I'm saying.
What are we talking about here? Is it a way to drink beer? What?
Well, there's a whistleblower, Andrew Bishago, who claims that he was part of a DARPA time travel project. And one of the technological devices they had was a chronovisor. Now, this was like a holographic deck.
Oh, yeah, straight out of They Live.
It is what it is.
Damn.
There you go, Joe.
Yeah. So that's a chronovisor. So we were thinking about, maybe if we got you the plans, you could build one for us because we just want to.
We actually have a Gates cold fusion device operational here in Grants Pass. We're going to be doing more studies on it. It's a Gates form from Ben Dede. He gave us some special notes, and we've got something that seemingly is working. What we would like to do is use it as a battery charger for for cell phones.
And you're talking John Bedini?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Cool. He fell off the face of the earth for a while.
Well, that's because what he's doing now is marketing it. What they did is they went into the computer business with cell phones so that they have batteries that you can charge your phone up in 10 minutes rather than overnight. And imagine how that's going to play. And then, of course, you can scale it up for small houses that might have grid down.
Wow, that's cool. Could you imagine, Kev?
But this cold fusion is something that's really close because there's a device. It's a weird-looking device, but they have pretty much knocked off this cold fusion.
So wait a minute. So what you're saying is
they control this.
If this is what you're saying it is, Doc, then I should be seeing hover cars and Mr. Fusion in no time. Is that right? Flying DeLoreans?
Yeah, the Jetsons flying by. There you go.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I've been waiting for this for a very, very long time, and I just want to see it come to fruition. Go ahead, Kev.
I'm actually trying to dig up the link here, but it's one of the most weird and wonderful looking machines I've ever seen, Joe. And basically it controls a plasma as hot as the sun within a magnetic field.
Oh, much like CERN.
Is that the thing you're talking about where
looks like a big donut with heaps of things?
Yeah, but like two bowls like off of each side, and then like in between them, it's like a hot plasma ball. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I will.
Yeah, that thing was cool.
Guys. Well, cool.
Imagine the stuff. Imagine the stuff that we could do. The things that are out there that we could really do. Some of the craziest things, like you said, like Jetsons cars and stuff like that. Just to really imagine.
No time, Ken. We have an inbound iron ball with a Dyson sphere surrounding it. Inbound, and as a result, we will not have our hover cars and Mr. Fusion.
Yeah. Now, what I did see bad about Nibiru is that it also had a debris trail behind it that will hit our orbit twice. That means another 2 years of debris after it goes through here.
Oh, that's great. Well, it'll make for a nice meteor shower, display. Kind of akin to Pompeii exploding, I'm thinking. Yeah, it's not good. Good grief.
Okay, it's Germans that are working on this device, guys, and it's called the Wendelstein. Not the Wendelstein, but the Wendelstein 7.
Okay, so you're sure about that. It's not the Wendelstein.
Joe, I'll drop the picture in here for you to look at. I'll drop it in the chat room. But basically, they reckon this could be a game changer, and it's the Max Planck Institute where they're working on this.
Oh, wow. That's a heck of a... Wow.
Remember how I told you that every bureaucracy I ever saw had an occult element within it?
Yes.
So I have a video of a bunch of engineers at CERN doing ghost dance on the platform.
Yes, that's the symmetry dance. That is so weird. What do you make of that place, Doc?
When you think about the implications.
What do you make of that place? What do you think's going on there on an occult level?
Well, they're trying to bring around biblical prophecy. Good luck. I don't think the Pope just came out with the third quote from Fatima, where she said that there will be millions on shorelines that will die in minutes. What does that remind you of? Is the day after tomorrow? Not the day after tomorrow. What was the other one? The apocalypse movie. What was that called?
2012.
Yes, 2012. Like when you saw big sheets of California sliding into the ocean on a horizontal. Yeah.
The work of
Los Angeles, for example, is full of caves.
Okay, guys, we are almost on the break. I don't mean to cut you off there, but we've got one section left with the Doc. Then there's an hour to go after that, and then it's the Geos. Where does time go, Joe?
In a black, white hole.
There is no such thing as time. That's the wrong answer, Joe.
Ouch.
Time's just an illusion. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back after the break.
Me melon.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate. No hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
Welcome back to all you thousands of Wookiees that are tuned in live tonight, and anyone that is listening to this in the archive. I'm one of the Woo crew, Kev Baker, and tonight we are joined by Joe Joseph, Johnny Whistles, Ken Webb, Scotty Lopez, and our very special guest, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Now, Doc, we have got one segment left with you. Where would you like to go, sir?
Well, I don't care. I just sent you things that I did, some samples of things that I did when in 1960 and 61. You guys are talking about plasma jets. That was my undergraduate thesis at Washington State University. I built the first plasma jet for Giannini that later led to building the space shuttle. And that's why in the cold fusion things I'm talking about, not theory, because back in 1960, when did I build that plasma jet? 1964, I built this plasma jet that was 60 times hotter than the surface of the sun, and I was able to take titanium rod and spray it at 1 angstrom thick.
Right, Doc, if you're doing that back in the 60s, right? I mean, I believe that there's a breakaway kind of tandem civilization going on here where the really top elites have some really Gucci toys. Now, with that kind of engine and that kind of technology, do you think there is some kind of two-tier space program where we don't see the main game in town?
Yes, I do. I know that they've used a lot of the black money for geoengineering and aircraft, because I've seen those aircraft with no markings. So somebody bought those with missing money, but there's so much of it missing that I just would have to think that something's going on. There was 4 nights ago, I think it was 4 nights ago, a nuclear explosion, 10 megaton, all past the moon. And it set up measurable seismology. We were able to measure the kiloton and where it was.
Whoa. Hang on, Doc. Who's exploding nukes near the moon?
I am.
Outside of it, yeah, but and out in space, yes.
Joe?
Yeah, I am. I routinely do it. Kim Jong-un. And
I was about to say, was it Kim Jong-un again?
Yeah, me and the North Koreans.
I have some insider friends at JPL, but I have to tell you, there's things going on that make no sense to me. Mars right now, when I first came out of graduate school, went to work for Boeing. The first job I had at Boeing was Lunar Base Alpha 1. That later was in South Park and later became the Space Center in Kent. And I worked under Art Pilgrim, who was now over in Kuwait, I think, doing greenhouses, hydroponic systems.
Did you ever come across Von Braun?
I didn't know, but Carol Rosen did, and she's just down the street here and become a good friend of mine.
Oh, you must get her to come on the show, Doc.
Oh, I can get Carol Rosen to work with you guys, no problem.
That'll save me playing that clip all the time, Joe.
Yeah, send me an email and I'll forward it as a letter of introduction, no problem.
But he's an interesting character, Doc. I mean, there's a Nazi scientist that ended up the head of our rocket program over at NASA. What's happening there?
Go on. I was just looking. She gave me a book by Von Braun, and she autographed it, but I can't find it. I kept it over here, but it's been moved. Anyway, I get a lot of weird books in all the time.
A book by Von Braun, Joe. Oh, this is what we need.
I could go with that, but I could also go for that interview too, because that would be awesome.
I'll tell you what I do know about World War II and all that kind of crap. I have seen badges with Ford Motor Company on it with a swastika. So, war is good for business. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with human rights or any of that kind of thing. It's all about business. And right. I am so upset at the way they're trying to profile us into a war again. I don't want to fight anybody in another country, and we can't afford it. And that's how a few men make a whole bunch of money off a whole bunch of young men dying.
Mm-hmm.
And so Von Braun and space and who's who, Dr. Feelgood, or what is his name? The one that I forget his name. It was Failsafe, the movie Failsafe. I
don't know. Can't remember his name.
The movie being there, that's Peter Sellers.
There you go.
Yeah, Dr. Strangelove. I call him Dr. Feelgood. Dr. Strangelove. Sorry, that's how I...
Mandrake, there's fluoride in that water, Mandrake.
Yeah, that's, what was his name in comic strips? The Phantom. No, Mandrake the Magician. And Luther, his sidekick.
Well, Doc, as we move into this, what is becoming an uncertain future, one of the topics that we cover on here a lot of the time is transhumanism. Now, nobody can argue that they're trying to merge man and machine. What's your thoughts
They
on
already
this?
are. That's NASA. That's the NASA document that is accurate. It's called the Future Weapons of War, the War After Next. That document is clear that by 2025, man will be in decline, and by 2050, there will be no such thing as a human being. It will be an Avatar 4 or something more. Now, there are science fiction books that have been written about this, where you're up in orbit around Pluto, no, or not Pluto, Jupiter, where you couldn't possibly send your body down into that kind of crushing system. And so you design and engineer something that you place your consciousness in, kind of like a golem, and in Hebrew literature. In fact, the human body could be likened as that on another level. That's the way William Gibson would play it. So there's all kinds of ways of looking at what's about to happen. What I can tell you is, with the amount of heavy metals that are in the air, everybody's breathing, they're going to probably turn you into a small laptop. Just kidding. But I'm not kidding, really, when I say that there are too many people on Earth for them to manage with the current systems of protocols for mind control. And so there's going to be blood. And that's how it works. And I don't mean to be negative about it.
No, you're being real, Doc. It's Joe that's taught me this. It's not fear and it's not scaring people. It's just being real.
Well, Yoda put it very succinctly. My gun you may have after I give you my bullets, I will.
Yeah.
That is the game that's being played, but you have to understand that Oath Keepers, all of them have been infiltrated. There's honesty in these, sincerity in some of these men, but they're being manipulated like you are with, it's a new car. You know, it's crazy what you find of value and why you would do something. Mm-hmm. I watched Black Friday after Thanksgiving, where this woman was being arrested for assaulting another woman for not, fighting over a $17 item from China.
The running of the sheeple. That's my favorite day of the year.
That woman, even when she was handcuffed, wouldn't release that $17 item.
No way.
What's wrong with that picture? I mean, well, here we are in America with 2 generations without a family. Mm-hmm. School systems are completely inequipped to teach.
They're collapsed.
All codes of ethics, yeah. Our value systems are shot. We have been, how did CIA put it? Oh, yes. We don't mind control. No, we don't need mind control. We have TV.
Yep. No, it's been a deliberate dumbing down of America, just as Charlotte Isherby wrote.
Common Core.
Yeah. And you see it in the statistics. I bring it up all the time, Doc. In 1953, when the Department of Education, Health, and Welfare was established, just before Truman left office, the United States was by far and away first in the world in math and science.
They were reading.
Yep. OECD in 2012, the UN organization that measures, they basically measure academic progress against all the countries. We went from first to 31st from 53 to 2012.
Then they used to say that it was our graduate schools because of the toys we had. And that part, we were leading in the world in advanced education because of the toys. And that's changing too. I remember when I took Latin in 2nd grade. Sum est sunt. There it is, just like I was taught. And the new math is kind of like get a grip. They're teaching you how to count qubits and systems that Egypt did. And I was going to use an axiom. I never got it when I said the the Egyptian concept of hadith and nuit, the expanse of infiniteness and the moment or center of nothingness. And hadith, she had it because she knew it. Now, with that metaphor, these are what we're going through right now, are different epochs of change. What we're about to do, I see you guys are sending me stuff, and I can't keep up with it.
It's okay,
it's
Doc.
okay.
It's just
It's
me
all right.
coming back with a cup
Or
of coffee.
someone else is talking to me. Oh, yeah.
He was just asking how many lumps do you want? That's all.
Yeah, well, what I would like to do is, I'll bet there's some questions in your gallery that they would like to know, like that blind guy.
It was actually Kevin, the blind gentleman, had dropped a question in before, and he was asking Doc if you know anything about any connections between the Sun and Jupiter.
No, the study I did was Neptune, and that was 1971 with Department of Interior. It came out of Yugoslavia and cosmobiology. It was not Jupiter, but when the Uranus, it was Neptune. When Neptune and the Sun were in a certain geometric alignment with Earth, there was a 3 sigma error coefficient on an earthquake happening. Suspicious Observers talks about it being CMEs because that's the current theory of what sets off our earthquakes and volcanoes. It's the CMEs coming off the sun. But the older one from cosmobiology, and that's people like Janif. Janif wrote about it. Let's see, who else? He wrote Lunar Sex Cycle of the Female, where when the woman is born, a lock is set with ovulation related to the phase of the moon and the sun and earth. And if she moves, then her ovulation period changes. And they documented that with a 1 sigma error coefficient on it. You could predict the actual sex of the child from conception if you knew the moment of conception.
Wow. I got another question.
Cosmobiology, it was Neptune and Earth. And there is no known laws where Neptune and the Earth with electromagnetics or any known laws that we have that are subtle things.
You know what really fascinates me, guys, is the fact that the ancients across the ages, they really tuned into these planetary movements. And like the Doc's saying there, I can imagine a time when they really did time copulation and having children right down to planetary motion. It's crazy stuff. Why have we lost touch with all of that?
It's important to know. I mean, people's personalities are basically, you can tell based on when they were born, you know, as far as like what their sign is.
Arbitrary, yes. Like you have 12,000 planets, that means you're in forced incarceration. Yes, I got that. I studied with Isabel Hickey when I was at Boston. I was very fortunate when I was at MIT to meet Isabel Hickey and take her course on astrology as a cosmic science. And she wrote a second book based on my astrological chart. She titled that book called Minerval on the planet Pluto. It turns out Pluto is at exactly 0 at my midheaven and forms a grand trine with my sun and my new moon with my moon in second house with a 12-degree orb. And so destiny having to do with time travel.
Wow, that's pretty
travel.
interesting. Wow, isn't that interesting, Kev? I never even realized it.
That memory and your discovery is getting back home.
Wow, that's heavy.
You had me at time travel, too.
Yeah, you had me at time travel, too.
Yeah, well, there's a movie out called Astral City. I may have mentioned it on the show before. It's in Portuguese, and it's about a medical doctor watching himself die on an operating table from an astral position, and what happens at the moment of his death. And it's called Astral City. And it's interesting because the metaphor there is that the physical world here is where we go to be sick spiritually.
I mean, let's face it, Doc, this is just a biological skin suit that we use to experience this plane of reality.
How did Meat Box, how did they put it in Fifth Element? I'm just a sack of meat.
That's basically it, isn't it? That's all it is, though. It's just a vehicle for our consciousness, our soul.
Yeah, and Leela, not without my permission. I don't know, man. I have a sense that there's more going on around us that we're not being told, and that very few people actually have the full story. I watched how they compartmentalize physics. I watched that all happen when the physics studies from the 70s changed into what they are now today, beginning in the 80s. I watched Stanford Research Institute change. I watched it all. I was there. You know, in the 70s, it was about blue sky. We had no idea what was going to come out of a study, and so it was open blue sky.
Now, Doc,
in the 80s, you didn't get funding unless it had application. That meant we already know what all we need to know, and now we want to make money.
And we need to know what you know, Doc. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I've got a question for you, because I've heard you mention before the bases or the base down in Antarctica.
Yeah,
talk
about the Germans.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah,
we need to know more about this, Doc. What's going on?
Oh, well, I don't know. I was brought in on I was not lead on that project. That was under another woman, an anthropologist. But she brought us in, and my responsibility was to understand how the light worked in that cavern. It was a bacteria that was bioluminescent. That was my academic field, was bioluminescence, resonant physics, and I was able to actually figure out how the bacteria did it. There was a cave in there under the Antarctic. It's up in the oh Jesus, I don't know how to the side towards closest to Africa. That part there, they're right on near the shore. There's an underground cave that is over a mile high and has clouds in it. I saw the Nazi base. It looked like it could hold like 19 subs. I saw a 14th century Viking base. It's been there a long time. And other races, other eras have found it, discovered it. And it has hot springs and thermals, and it's really a creepy place. And I have a friend that worked out of Brazil. The Nazis would come in on an island just off of Brazil as their staging area going in. There are videos of, the Russian videos are the best ones that you can actually see the Foo Fighters and some of the other weirdness that kicked ass on Admiral Byrd's fleet in. They lost like 3 ships or something like that. So the Nazis were there after the war, and I think it was around in the 60s when Kennedy nuked it, and the Nazis, some of them apparently escaped into lower caverns. And I don't think the reason we're speaking German right now is most likely those Nazis ran into something down there that stopped that nonsense. I
bet you a few of these Nazi scientists must have ended up at Area 51 as well. And I'm sure you've probably been there too, Doc.
Well, I've been in and out of a lot of different facilities like that. I don't talk about some of them because my memory has been scrambled or something's funny there, and I don't understand how that works, so I don't bother with that. I only talk about what I can remember. I have seen artifacts, so I know that something exists out there, whether it's an alien technology or previous epoch. Now, stay tuned on that part. I don't know. I don't have any direct knowledge in that regard. The artifact I looked at was electrophoretic. It was like foil that would resume its shape within a minute of any kind of damage. My part in it was I fired a 50 caliber cannon at it and went down with an electron microscope to look for lattice damage. There was none. That thing was 100 times stronger than diamond. Now, we didn't have anything back then in my knowledge base. We do today with fullerenes, but back then I didn't have any knowledge of anything that was that hard. And it looked like it had been bonded on some molecular level. I'm not even sure how to look at it correctly with the equipment I had back when I was doing that. It was at the University of Chicago in the underbarrage. You know, they have an underground base there in Chicago. That's where I did my study on that. They never give you full disclosure. You never know. Like, I didn't know where it came from. I heard rumor it was from the Florida Everglades, but I don't know. It wasn't Roswell. I don't even know what happened in Roswell. I'm not sure that wasn't those poison gas bubbles that they had. We had a couple of those land, like Roswell in Oregon. So, you know, the Japanese doing a parting shot, they released a bunch of weather balloons that had toxin in them. They were hoping to cause up to sea, so it wasn't like anything happened. I don't know. That's the deal. See, I don't know about that part. I have seen top secret documents in my time. I had vault permits, so I could go into certain vaults without a need to know I was a reader.
What
And
kind of clearance did you have, Doc? Because we hear about all these different security levels.
At the time I was in military, there were basic, confidential, secret, and top secret. And then you had little green dots that would go on for specific vaults. And that's what they had. They had confidential, secret, and top secret. And then they had the top secret was an orange badge. And then you had on the orange badge, you would have little green tags on it that allowed you into a certain vault without a need to know. I could just walk in and grab anything I wanted. And I managed those vaults. And one of them, I saw a couple documents that were real weird. I saw that they had detonated a nuclear warhead in this. This was in 1970. I saw these documents from 1964 where they were using in the Mariner flyby to measure the water on Mars. This whiz kid from Seattle, me, with the linear accelerator and creating a tachyon factory to measure what they call Bremenstrahlen radiation. At that time, I called it Cherenkov, based on Dr. Cherenkov from Russia. And I was the first American to have particles going faster than the speed of light. And I did that in 1961 as a high school kid. Now, what I saw in these documents in 1970 was that document about me. So I started fitting together what I was there for. Then in 1967, they detonated a nuclear warhead on the south pole of Mars. About the same time, they probably, and I think it was Johnson that did it, trying to take the Nazis out of Antarctica. And then in 1968, they sent a joint manned expedition to Mars. And I have no idea what happened. And that was 1 year before the moon. And that was the joint project was with the Soviet Union. We were in a Cold War with them. So all of that then meant that was a false flag.
You see, Joe, I mean, this sounds like pretty much where we are just now, Doc, because we see the whole world. It's like everyone against Russia, yet at the same time, our space programs are interlocked.
Yeah, Edgar Casey says it will be the bear that saves the world. Putin, in all of his huffy, shirtless, muscle-bound,
gotta love it though, man. That's good PR. Could you imagine a Chairman Obama doing the same thing?
Oh man, no. Everybody in the European Union thinks that Obama has a screw loose.
Because he does.
Putin got a standing ovation at the United Nations when he said, "You want to come to Russia and be a Russian, you have to speak Russian." And they gave him a 5-minute, standing ovation because of that statement. Now that's Putin at his best. Now I don't know Putin. I don't have a feeling about it, but Russia is hurting just like America is. And now China's going down in a pit, and you will watch a bunch of Walmart stores starting to close shortly.
Yeah.
They can no longer outsell in pricing a lot of products.
It's amazing, too, because those big box retailers, Doc, they make sometimes, I know, for example, like Lowe's. I know a manufacturer that actually sells to Lowe's, and one of them's a paint scraper that they sell for $9.97 at the time. And they were buying them for $1.04 a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the profit margin on that. And that's what these big box retailers. Yeah, because
it's
of the
transnational corporations. When you realize Jimmy Carter came out in Art magazine, that's for old parts like me. That Art magazine did a big interview with Jimmy Carter, and he said Washington's for sale. Now, what he meant is that Monsanto has a cash flow that's 40 times that of North America, and that 40th down is Johnson & Johnson Wax, and their annual budget is 4 times the state of Oregon where I live. Those kinds of places, China right now owns 50% of my town, Grants Pass. Mm-hmm. The BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, is giving our forests back to China based on the national debt. And that Bundy Ranch thing was all about China trying to put in the utilities like they've already taken over Canada.
Now, Doc, where can people find your work? Because unfortunately, we're almost out of time, and I would hate for you to go without letting people know where they can check out more of your brilliant research.
Starving Martist. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, richardallenmiller.com, A-L-A-N Miller. richardallenmiller.com is my primary. My Facebook blog, which has a bookstore, you can go up and go to the bookstore, is at docram.com. And then I have a whole bunch of side websites and things like that, but those are the primary ones. If you want to go directly to the publishing, then go to oak-publishing.com. That's
Doc,
it.
thank you for your time. And this world would be a whole lot better. And the movie would change itself if we had a whole lot more Doc Millers in the world. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And listen, folks, we'll be back on the other side of the break. Things are going to get even freakier. And don't forget, we've got Chris and Cherie Geo right after this.